Ladies and gentlemen, LEC, the slowest format globally. Kind of silly that we have to wait to tune everything in accordance to EMA Masters, because they are rushing things, you know. They are rushing. I don't know what the scheduling was for, but it is what it is. I worry for the future of LEC, because the LEC is insanely fortunate that Asian Games is on, and that's why the only reason why teams will actually have time to practice. Without Asian Games, I think the scheduling is absolutely atrocious. It was the same last year, even though the format was different, the issues were very, very similar and very, very the same, you know? It's like, in my mind, right? If I take myself back to our Worlds run. So basically, 9/11, right? September 11th, we were done, and then 12th of September, we were done, right? Because we have to fly one day and travel one day. And basically, we are in a position where we just played the gauntlet, so we need to take a couple of days off, and obviously Fnatic needs to we need to do content, because naturally it's like we're qualified to the World Championship, we need to do the jersey content, we need to do the advertisement, because in the end that's what pays the bills, right? It's like we need to pay the bills. So 3 days of content, 3 days for rest, and that leaves us with very limited scrim days, because keep in mind, we have no one to practice against because we can't boot camp. The only team we could scrim against in Europe was the Turkish team. And then the only days, we had 2 days of potential scrims against G2 Mad Lions, because they took some time off because they started in the main event, right? In the end, we managed to get COVID. We arrived to the event. We lose days here. We lose days because of media. We lose days because of enemy team not having appropriate COVID tests. We lost so many days, we barely practiced the whole fucking tournament. So basically, play-ins, if I remember correctly, let's just check the date of when play-ins started, just for the heck of it, okay? This is the wrong, we have to press 2022 season. Let's check when play-ins started. I think it was 28th of September. Let's check it out. Play-ins started. Play-ins. So it's 29th. And then let me just double check the date. Let me just double check the date of LEC finals. Let me just see the LEC finals date. Summer playoffs. So, as I said, 9/11, right? 11th September. It was insanely tight, man. It was insanely tight. If it wasn't for Asian Games, they would be exactly in the same position, the European teams. And I hope, it's like, if I join LEC next year, I'm gonna make a ruckus about this. I think all of the teams need to unite, because it's like, being able to bootcamp is a huge boost of performance. Because you are all of a sudden, you get to be in tune with the teams that are ahead of you in a very different way, you know? It's like that 1 week where you get completely fisted and shafted by the Asian teams is so important for your growth. So important. So I hope this gets addressed. But luckily this time around, right? Asian Games and then October 10th, it's like most teams will have 4 weeks, 5 weeks of preparation. And that's huge. Really, really big, you know? I think that's massive, you know? I think that's going to be super helpful, you know? G2 being able to boot camp, any of the teams being able to boot camp is going to be super beneficial. Because Korea is just that you will always find practice partners. There's always going to be teams that are busy. Solo queue is, you know, solo queue there has its own issues, but it also has its benefits, you know? Just the scrim practice is fucking wonderful there, man. And it's really, really beneficial to all of the teams that are going. Speaking of the teams that are going, we are heading into the loser brackets now. We already have 2 teams qualified. So you have G2 versus Mad Lions already in the winners bracket final, which means that Mad Lions at a minimum is, you know, top 3. These 2 teams are minimum top 3. because obviously if they lose this one, they're going to go into the loser bracket finals, and then these teams are competing then for the final spot. It's kind of your second chance at life. And then you have XL versus Fnatic, BDS versus SK, also qualifying to top 4 through this, right? So any team needs to win a best of 5 to qualify. Last week we had G2 versus BDS. G2 managed to drop a game. Let's take a look at some of the drafts, right? G2 managed to drop a game. I think like if you want to just have a crash course on what you need with Evelyn, keep in mind when Evelyn was played the last time, it's like Evelyn, the way you need to treat her is basically she's a global champion, right? If you can have a show of force that wins if Evelyn shows up, right? If Evelyn shows up and you win with a show of force, then Evelyn is very weak. If Evelyn is stronger than you in 2v2s, 3v3s, then she has a global presence that you can't really counteract, right? So you suffocate very easily against Evelyn when you're behind. So it's very important that you have a composition that can get you ahead, because Evelyn won't get you ahead. She will only allow you to benefit from a circumstance where you are ahead. So in isolation, right, you might think, oh, Evelyn is going to be able to farm for free against Ivern, but my issue with Evelyn being a so-called counter into Ivern is that Ivern will actually increase the lethal ranges that Evelyn needs to land on in order to win. So that's already an issue in itself, right? I think Ivern is just broken, I'm not gonna lie. I think that the latest patch of Ivern just made him better in every way possible for competitive. The scaling HP, instead of having it on ranked points, the smite change, the base shield for AP scaling nerf, like who cares? Most of the time Ivans, they're buying support items anyway. Heal and shield power and all that jazz. That does not affect it, right? That is not affected, that's all good. I think plain and simple, Ivern is giga OP. Evelyn was a cute thing. And if I bring you back to Evelyn when the last time it was placed, right? Evelyn was played with Lucian. What does Lucian do? He wins lane. He dominates lane. What happened in this game? Tristana was having prio first. Tristana with fleet footwork beats Jace early on. Zeri and Braum managed to contest bottom side. Here as well, G2, they blundered, right? They're banning Lulu to prepare to make Evelyn stronger, which I think is a mistake. Alistar the same way. They're banning the supports that they believe are good against Evelyn. I really like the Lucian ban here. I think the Lucian ban was very precise here. You could consider, yo, they should ban Kai'Sa instead, but I think that all in all, I think in the mindset that BDS was in was if they play Kai'Sa, they will be weak at bottom side and Mickey will not be enabled to that same level. And BDS, they found the kill on the invade against Evelyn with the prio that they had, and then Darius converted that into a kill too. So if you want to play Evelyn, right, understand that early game you need to get carried and you need to have heavy prio lanes. And then when you get to the point where your side laners are stronger, Evelyn has a very global effect. The key thing about Evelyn, what makes her strong, especially in solo queue, is that when this champion is accelerated, this champion is unbelievably hard to play against because she can pressure you on mid, on side at the same time, and can reach lethal ranges pretty easily with the gold influx. But you need to make sure that you're actually stronger when it comes to the prio situation, so Evelyn can actually get to that point, you know? She needs to pick up freebies. Similar to when we saw Bel'Veth being played, and this is just a school of champion that we don't see a lot in competitive, because playing for jungle is in a lot of cases worse than playing for your lanes, you know? Especially when things are very dynamic, because there's a lot of imprecisions in lanes, and additionally, you know, lane matchups are also very dynamic because the pool of champions that are being played is all over the place too, you know? If you can't guarantee yourself to have strong matchups, it's a lot harder. All in all, what did BDS show this series? I think BDS, you know, in this first initial game, I think that they course corrected very fast. They sent the Kai'Sa into LB, which is cute and all. Big Ivern prio, I liked it a lot. G2 eventually had to pivot and ban Ivern, which I think was good. They showed Renekton prio, which is perfectly fine and dandy. You know, it's like Adam as a player is a very strong Renekton player, is a very strong Aatrox player too. So I wanted to just highlight that because the conversation is often is Darius and is Olaf, but I think is Renekton and Aatrox, those are also very Adam-esque champs. So they played Ivern, Rel got first pick, which is something that we will continue to see. The majority of it, right, is that the meta remained relatively the same. You know, the same mid laners are strong, the same junglers are strong, and the only key differences we saw in terms of the meta development is just that Talia was 100% present with bans. 7 bans games, 7 bans, you know, it's just Talia is perma banned by everybody. So BDS, they had this, I think at the core, I like the identity of BDS, right? Renekton, Ivan, Kai'Sa, they went Zeri Lulu. I think here, this is the danger, right? When you have Lulu and Ivan and you have 80 carries that are relatively short range, I think this is something that opens up way too many opportunities here. In isolation, Zeri Lulu should be very good against Kog'Maw Braum, but I think that they over-index on Ivan and Lulu, making them very, very reliant on 80 carries to push it forward. But the issue is Kog'Maw Braum, they scale super well into the game because they can deny the damage, and Kog'Maw actually outranges. So when you play compositions like Ivan and Lulu together, your AD needs to outrange everybody else on the enemy team. Otherwise, you're going to heavily struggle. You need to have kind of buttons here that are going to pressure you, and I think the fact that Braum and Kog'Maw got through here into 4-5, I think BDS was a little bit too focused on the fact that they got Lulu. If you look later in the drafts, something that could have played out very similarly, right? Here you can see this was not an opportunity for them to go Lulu into Rakan, right? But they have then pivoted, and they've chosen to play the Alistar side because they didn't want to be in a position again where Ivan and Lulu is being played together. But I think this is where you can maybe argue that just because you have Azir on your team, you can play the range game. Maybe you play Emilio here on 5, and then all of a sudden you're going to actually be able to pressure the enemy to engage into you. But you can see that they're the change up here for them, because in isolation, right, they did in fact fucking pick Alistar into Ezreal, which is on paper terrible, but you can see the mindset of BDS that, oh, we didn't have enough buttons the last time we played Ivan. But I think here this is very different because they have Azir on their team, right? And but then again, you could argue, oh, enemy has Ezreal, so we were going to get outrange by picking Alistar into Ezreal. That's not going to help you. This fourth game, I think this was very winnable for BDS. They struggled to convert, but I think this is a very good highlight if you want to go back and look at it of what G2 have actually practiced throughout summer. I think this was a very high class level of gameplay where G2 managed to punish a lot of mistakes. They managed to get catches on side. I think in this one, Adam was struggling. They were having a very hard time taking the pressure through mid and then crossing and then connecting and then pushing the enemy out, because G2 was always aware of their tempo, always aware of the correct space to be in, and always looking for people that have gone astray. But these type of nuances are not things that we're going to see in the next series between BDS and SK. I don't think BDS need to be worried about SK exerting that kind of a pressure. So the first matchup, after we talked about G2 and BDS, I think we should just talk about BDS and SK because it's the next one. First and foremost, strictly from a narrative point of view, they should be, like, this is so much on the line, right? BDS and SK, they have all 10 players in this particular alteration. Only Adam has been to the World Championship. So these players are competing for so much more than just this best of 5 in isolation, because these are the type of best of 5s where elite players are made. This is the chance for Crowny to really stand out. This is an opportunity for, of course, Certus to also stand out. This is an opportunity for players to really, you know, create impactful memories that are going to impact future contracts that they have. A lot on the line here for BDS and SK. Looking at SK, right, we haven't seen them play in a long time, right? They struggled through summer. They managed to, you know, be fairly consistent throughout the year. They had a very big momentum coming into winter, and Exakick and DOS impressed everybody with their arranged and Zeri play, right? This is something that they did super well. In terms of SK in summer, right, I think that the biggest highlight for them was beating Fnatic 2-0. Good preparation coming into the series. Irrelevant finding a really good Gwen carry game, and the fact that his Jax is super good is also a massive benefit, right? I think that in terms of Exakick on his Kai'Sa play was also super good. And you know, the interesting thing about SK, I've mentioned this before for those who watch my other pieces of content, right, is that, you know, you are in a position, it's like SK is a team that I think if they stuck together for longer, and they just had something that, like something that really pushed them and really, you know, pieced it together. I feel like this team has shown very high highs and great potential at times, right? But my main issue is that I feel like everything is so momentum based when it comes to this team. They've had, for example, that Kaiser game when they played Kaiser Maokai, that was a beautiful performance, very high level performance against Fnatic. But then they have games where they completely lose their mind and throw their advantages because they are over chasing and overreaching. I feel like everything is so momentum based when it comes to this SK roster that when Marcoon has everything connect to him, he ganks bot, gets a kill, dives top, everything connects to him, he has momentum in the game, things are looking wonderful up until the point where they make a mistake. Then they seem to not be able to recover at all. It seems to me like SK within the game, everything is so momentum based that if something happens that is out of the ordinary, they seem to struggle so damn hard to recover. But if they can maintain that momentum throughout the game and the enemy is not so disciplined in the way they play a defensive game, SK looks very sharp. But that's the main thing, right? If you are disciplined and you make SK feel a little bit more frustrated in terms of how they need to close out the game and you invite their mistakes, eventually those mistakes happen. And that is my main concern about SK. They have the makings of a team that could be very interesting and very good, but that level of inconsistency worries me when it comes to evaluating SK coming into potentially, well, not potentially, 100% the most important best of 5 of the season, right? Looking at their solo queue account, you know, Certus, Akali, you know, I think Certus, Akali could maybe be played into Azir. I think if anything, looking at SK, things that I would consider as bans, for sure is the Poppy, I think for sure is the Jax. I think these are the two champions that can really cause damage against BDS, and then filler ban depending on what you're feeling, right? It's like, you see that Marcoon is playing a shit ton of Nidalee and Talia as well. This is something that will be contested because the last time G2 was banning Talia against BDS. I'm hoping that we actually get to see some Talia gameplay happen. Certus, I think if there's anything that can create an edge for SK in this particular matchup against BDS, I think it's Certus. I think this is a moment for him to actually really convince me that he's a strong player, you know, and deserves to stick around in the LEC. Because I think up against Nook is a player that has been serviceable. I think he had, you know, a couple of, like a decent showing against Caps the last time. I think that Nook had a good game, but I'm hoping that Certus here, you know, if he wants to, you know, stand out in some shape of way, it has to be in this particular matchup. It has to be against Nook. His Akali game, his LeBlanc game, he needs to actually, you know, play damn good, you know? Looking at the rest, we have Ivan gameplay. No craziness there. Nidalee, we hope we don't see that. Irrelevant, just playing Aatrox. Renekton, as per usual, nothing too crazy. DOS is just playing Rel, the melee supports. Twitch is something that has come up on multiple accounts. People are using Twitch as an answer into potentially Ezreal, into potentially Zeri. We'll see how that pans out. You know, you can play Twitch together with Rakan, you play Twitch together with Lulu, you can play with multiple pairings. It's interesting. Kalista is another one, right? I'm assuming that everyone has hopped on this trend due to Hansama, right? It's like always when Zeri, Xayah, and Kaiser is out, it opens up a very large pool of AD carries that you can play. Kalista is one of them, Varus is one of them, Ashe is one of them. A lot of strong AD carries that can really piece together your composition. But nevertheless, BDS, I think that the key thing that this series will come down to is what is the form of irrelevant, you know? I think I'm hoping that BDS just slam a Jax ban the entire series. I think Jax ban, Poppy ban are going to be super important bans. I think that the main thing, I think if BDS, it's like Shio at his best, right? Shio at his best, I think, is SK Marcoon's worst enemy. Because I think Shio at his best is the type of player that secures his lanes and then pressures into bottom side, right? While Marcoon, I think, is very momentum based. The best version of Marcoon is the guy that hits that level 3 gang with the Papushka and then has, you know, the ability and the opportunity to pressure the enemy without any slowing down. I think though, if BDS managed to secure the early game and transition that into mid to late game and have a pretty stable game, I think that BDS should be favored. I think BDS showed a lot of depth in terms of what they can play bottom side. I think that's super important. I think that Crowny and Labrov, I would give them the edge over Exekick and DOS based on what we've seen in the recent times. Of course, a lot of things can change because we haven't seen SK play now for what is 4 weeks, I believe. So of course things can change. I think it will be interesting to see what kind of answers Irrelevant has prepared for Renekton that aren't Jax. I think if Adam gets to play Renekton against Gnar, I think that's a matchup that he should be very happy in. We saw that he's the one that likes to lock in Darius against Renekton. I think that he was very impactful in that game against, of course, G2, where he managed to control the lane phase completely, control the wave, and then find the kill on Evelyn in the enemy jungle, which was super huge. I think still though, Jax is where, of course, SK have an edge. This is the big one, right? I think just Jax. If Jax is out, I don't think Irrelevant has much of an edge in this matchup. That's the key thing. And then the question is, can he just 1v9 with Gnar? He has done that in the past. Definitely a possibility. Because at least in my mind, I'm thinking that's his next answer into Renekton, because Renekton will be picked by, of course, BDS whenever they can. And then the next question, right, is if Jax ban is matched with Renekton ban, will they then continue in the direction of, will they blind pick Aatrox? Will they blind pick K'Sante, right? And then maybe Gwen will open up, and I think that's where Irrelevant becomes stronger again, right? That's something that is interesting to me, you know. If they are in a position where Jax ban is matched by Renekton ban, who is going to be stronger when the top lane pool opens up a little bit more? Because we're going to see Aatrox, we're going to see Rumble as well, right? Rumble is something that I imagine Irrelevant more likely to play, right? Even though he hasn't played it in competitive, he has played some games in solo queue. So that could be an angle that SK could explore. Like if they assume Jax ban to remove Renekton, I think Irrelevant becomes a stronger player there. Gragas is another thing that you could pick into Renekton, sure, but I think Renekton will define a lot in this series, you know. Maybe they start off by trying to play Gnar into Renek, or they just match Jax ban with Renekton ban, and then they see how that plays out. Of course, Irrelevant has the tanks in the pocket, but I think that currently with the pacing of the game, Renekton, just one core, early game, Rift Herald fight, second Drake, third Drake. I think this is something that Renekton just dominates, because a lot of games are decided super early, and I think the same will be true for this series. Right? When it comes to mid lane, as mentioned, I would give Certus the edge. I think that Certus could be the deciding factor. If SK is going to have an edge here, I think he has a large champion pool, and I think that Certus has been kind of up and down in this performance, but he's had some high highs, and if he manages to find those high highs in this series, I think that he could be the difference maker, right? But Nuke held his own against Cap, so he's a tough cookie to break. I don't think it's as easy as I maybe might make it sound, but I feel like if SK are going to win the series, it is going to be because Certus is performing you know, at his absolute peak. And if Markoon can weave together a very strong early games and they can have that momentum within the game, I think that SK can definitely take games. But I think in terms of my evaluations, like what did we learn about BDS in the most recent series? I think Adam form is good. Adam form is actually good. Adam has decent form. He had a very bad summer split, I think, Adam. But his form in that series, I think it gave me hope, you know? It gave me hope. So my prediction for this series, I think that it has the potential to go to 5 games. And I think if it does, I think BDS is going to win out. I think BDS is going to win out. It is because of all of the things that I've mentioned, you know? All of the things that I've mentioned. In terms of what BDS have been preparing, we see the Kaiser mid lane. That's the answer into LB. We also see Adam. You know, Adam is usually playing cocktail shit, so it is what it is. And then, of course, here we have the Twitch also appearing, as I mentioned before, from Ghetto, Mr. Crowny. We shall see. Just one final look here at BDS's drafts. yeah, I feel like Nuke is the type of player when he can play a solid base of champions. Like in this case, right? He's just playing Tristana, Jace, Azir. I think this is the best version of Nuke, and I wonder if Certus can find an edge through champion picks, you know? But Nuke was very serviceable against BDS. But okay, I think it has the potential to be a close series, but I lean towards BDS. I think BDS is just the more consistent team. I think SK has very high highs, but I think when now with the pressure being elevated, I think things can be tough, you know? But then again, you know, we haven't seen SK playing forever. So it's like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, how much is it, you know? It's like, what version of SK we're going to see? I have no clue, you know? These are just predictions based on what we've seen so far. So it is going to be an exciting series. The other side of things, XL, I feel, you know, XL, my stream lagging? Looks like my stream is lagging. I managed to misclick SK. Seems like I am lagging super much. I'm good now? Seems like I'm still dropping frames. Sorry, guys. Is it better now? Alright, I will continue. Okay. Mad versus XL. I think XL, what was so strange was XL's biggest strength, right, coming into this series, I thought, is that when they have positions later on in the game, they are disciplined enough to not risk too much, besides Oruamna occasionally being caught on site, right? I thought XL would be disciplined enough to actually carry their advantages to victories, right? And additionally, I felt like XL was a team that had a good read on the meta, right? But here, it's like, in my mind, very strange. XL decide to drop jungle, they don't pick up the Sejuani, they don't pick the Ivan in the 1-2, they slam Alistar into the 4-5, the enemy gets Poppy Ezreal into the Alistar. Kalista fine, strong into Ezreal, I understand why that happens, but it's like, dropping Poppy into 4-5 is also something that is interesting. I don't think that XL do well in, like, sure, XL occasionally, it's like, Peach has had some fine, I believe, I remember like one good Viego game, one good Lee Sin game, but I feel like XL had a very clear identity, you know, where the jungler is just playing like one of the tank junglers, low eco junglers that can just pressure and tune with his teammates, you know. But here, Renekton, Alistar, Kalista, Rel, Ivan, Azir, and then Poppy Ezreal. And then you decide to slam Corki because that's your answer into Azir. Corki, I don't feel like he's really in line with what Kalista, Alistar, and Renekton want to accomplish in the game. And I feel like that allows the enemy team then to alleviate so much of the pressure that Kalista wants to achieve, and then she's going to fall off super heavy. I think unless you're stacking waves and diving with Kalista, I don't think necessarily that you should be playing it. I'm not a super big fan. In this particular game as well, Mad Lions got 2v2 kills on bot. Second game, I think XL definitely should have won with the leads that they accrued, but they didn't manage to convert because they were getting caught and were taking very poor fights. And then of course Kazi got pretty lucky with the CV play on mid, where he gets a quadra kill. But it's just XL did manage to have leads in some of these games, and they just couldn't convert. And then additionally, from the point of view of having like a meta read, they seem to have completely lost their mind, because Lee Sin Nar has to be one of the worst 4-5 rotations that I've ever seen in the history of League of Legends. Lee Sin Nar 4-5 here just ruins it all. And I think that XL didn't have a good read on jungle, didn't have a good read on the strength of Poppy. I think Poppy is insanely OP in the context of everything that is being played everywhere, right? And Ivan as well, didn't prepare Ivan. It's like, if you have Peach in your team, you better fucking lock in Rel, Ivan, Sejuani, 1, 2, 3, like Poppy. These 4 junglers, honestly, for most teams, it's true that you should lock in these 4 junglers. They are really, really insanely strong still, even after changes, after nerfs. Maokai. Sorry, I forgot Maokai. That's 5. Lock them in 1, 2, 3, yeah? Here, Rel, perfectly fine. You the first pick Rel, right? But you just 4-5 Lee Sin now. Like, what are you doing with your life? You know? So it's like, for me, what I perceived as XL's biggest strength was something that they seemed to have lost when they played against Mad Lions. Not being able to convert winning positions, and additionally, you know, their draft preparation was god-awful. And now on the contrary, on the other side, it's like, what do we know about Fnatic, right? What do we know about Fnatic? What can we say about Fnatic? It's like, if Talia is relevant and Karthus is relevant, I think that Razork can be a massive edge. I think that Razork being able to play both ways, I think makes Fnatic have an advantage in the jungle already. I think that's super, super massive. I think in terms of Abedage's biggest weakness, I think that's also Humanoid's biggest strength. When it comes to lane phase and pressuring enemy players that lane bad, I think Humanoid is the guy that you want to send in. I always call Humanoid European Chovy, right? Because in terms of lane phase and squeezing numbers, he's super, super good. In terms of transferring pressures, Caps is definitely like the better mid laner, right? I think that Naafiri is kind of like bait. I don't think this is going to be played, you know? I think Naafiri is not going to be played. Like, if Caps is not playing it, then I don't think anybody was going to play it. I think this is just something that people put time into just in case it's going to be good. And it seems like the consensus in the LEC that this champion is not so strong for competitive. I think in competitive, it just has a lot of counterplay. You can block it, and early is not that super strong. It needs to farm and get items. Maybe that's something that's going to prove me wrong, but that's my current assessment of Naafiri. So, I think Humanoid is a terrible matchup for Abadage. I think also Razor Activo, the fact that he can play many different champions, is super, super good. Oscarinin didn't play any Renekton in the regular split, which was strange, right? And no Renekton, but he's been spamming it in solo queue, so maybe things are going to look different, right? Fnatic, like, this is 56 games of Renekton, so it's like he definitely fucking caught up on some Renekton gameplay, right? He has it in the pocket now, I assume, right? So this is him being ready now on Renekton. I think the main thing that was problematic, I think, for Fnatic as they tried to progress through the bracket, and the last time they played against XL, is just that I think that Noah and Trymbi didn't really find themselves on the newer patch. I think Aphelios being weaker definitely hurt Noah, and I think that Fnatic as a whole got really, really used to playing through a bot side that was stronger. Because in the regular split, I think that both games, Noah and Trymbi actually had full control over bottom side, and they managed to invade the enemy bot side camps consistently, and Razor got advantages, and then Trymbi was unleashed. But when the opposite happened, when the bot lane was isolated, they didn't really have a good way of connecting into the game. There was a lot of games where Noah played where he wasn't on Xayah, where he was super, super quiet in the game. And in those games, I think also that Tromboner was not impactful. So I wonder now, in a world where the meta definitely has shifted in a way where gameplay becomes more dynamic, and I just want to define that. Early game being more dynamic, basically what I'm trying to say with that point is that enemy team can make choices in draft that forces you to maybe play 2v2 top side, 3v3 mid. You can't always pressure through bottom side, because there's going to be bot lane matchups that are really, really stale. For example, like Alistair Rakan versus Xayah Kaiser. You know, like, let's say that's the matchup. Playing through bottom side, it's like, unless the enemy makes mistakes, so you make massive trade wins, it is going to be a fairly standard and chill bot lane, all right? And then a lot of action is going to happen through 3v3 mid. So it becomes a lot more dynamic how you have to approach the early game. You can't like pressure dive on bot because the enemy is too durable. Or you can't pressure invade because the enemy can just match and bot lane wave state is even, right? these are the things that force you to change how you need to approach the game. Maybe there's a top lane matchup, for example, Jace versus Renekton, and enemy has, Renekton versus Jax, and then all of a sudden you have Sejuani in the game, and you have to play 2v2 bot top side, or the enemy locks in Talia Renekton, and they have a very stable bot, and the enemy team is going to dive you top. All of a sudden, you can't play the game so formulaic as we've seen at many parts of the year, and I think this is where Fnatic bot lane could potentially struggle. Now they've had 4 or 5 weeks, right? A lot of time to fucking prepare, and you have to assume and imagine, for the love of God, I hope that their bot lane has learned and adjusted to playing a game where if they are not the ones in control and they are not the ones dominating the game, that they find ways to connect in the game and actually be impactful, right? Actually find ways to be impactful even though you are in the center and you don't have any massive advantages. I think though, I think I want to lean towards Fnatic ever so slightly, but another thing that is so strange about Fnatic is that when they come in and they play, it's like the last time they came in on a new patch, they knowing Fnatic and their players, I think that they can come into the series and play completely the wrong champions. I can see a world where they come into a series and play the wrong champions, they have the wrong read on the meta, and they screw themselves over, right? This is something that in the regular split, I think that they had some poor drafts, poor reads, like they were the only ones playing Ryze, for example. Like they had a game when they played Syndra, and I think they got away with a lot because in the grand scheme of things, I think that they were very, very good when it came down to, just playing the lanes and having really, really good, leads, very strong leads because they were laning better than people, right? Freeze is helping Fnatic this week. I think that's really troll. I'm not gonna lie. I've heard that Freeze is helping Fnatic, but I think that's really troll. I think it's borderline disrespectful to your staff. It's like you've built your staff with a purpose, and then you have someone that doesn't have the context come in and interact with your players at that point in time. When you're heading into the most important best of 5 of the series of the year. I think that shit like that can be dangerous. I hope that the relationship is that Freeze is just supporting the coaches and not interacting directly with the players, because I think that's where additional conflict can appear. But nevertheless, right, the Fnatic versus SK series, that was a very, very bad showing from Fnatic, and that was them coming in on a new patch, right? And I worry coming in after 4 weeks of work, 5 weeks of work, that they're coming into this particular meta and I also have a wrong read, Because I think that in general, Fnatic, they're a very emotional team. Like in terms of the peak that they can present against an XL, I think that can be higher. But XL did have a bad showing against Mad Lions. And now the question is the honeymoon period of XL's momentum, is that over, or will they find their stride again? So if I try to summarize the matchup, I think that XL's bot lane is better. I think that Oroamne versus Oscarinin, I think that's a fairly I think that's a fairly even matchup. Both players play Rumble. Probably Odoamne won't play Rumble. I think that I didn't like how unimpactful Odoamne was on Renekton even when he was ahead, That doesn't look like the LPL Renektons that I've seen, Fnatic, we haven't seen them in 4 or 5 weeks. I would give Humanoid the edge over Abbedagge. I think Abbedagge has been wildly overrated. I think Razork has the edge over Peach. So it's mid-jungle, I think heavy edge in terms of Fnatic. XL, I think they have edge in terms of bottom side, but Noah and Trymbi are very mechanically talented players. So the question is, Fnatic, can Fnatic find form in a world where melee supports are the meta? Keep in mind, my view on XL, I think that their bot lane was by far the biggest change up in terms of how XL has played. I think Limit and Patrick played insanely well, and they really found themselves on a melee support meta. And I think that Noah and Trymbi were the opposite. They didn't find themselves in the melee support meta the same way. Still though, Noah and Trymbi are very mechanically talented. And the question will be, can they play games where they are not playing through bottom side? How can Noah and Trymbi find impact in the game where they're not playing through bottom side? We've seen many games where they just have been a non-factor. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I want to lean towards Fnatic due to the advantage that they have in mid and the advantage they have in jungle. I want to lean towards Fnatic. But this is such a weird one to predict. I think both series are very tough to predict because in 4 to 5 weeks, many things can happen. And coming into a best of 5 like this, you know, you're going to see, you might potentially see a team that is tilted off the planet and they've just been bleeding in scrims the entire 3 weeks and they can't figure themselves out. You might see a team of players that might be injured or tired or burnt out. You know, a lot of things can occur in such a time frame. And my biggest hope is that these teams come into the series with the absolute best form possible. Also worth to highlight, right, is that there hasn't been that big changes in the meta. AP junglers are being played, and I think that Talia and Karthus and Ivan are very good answers into some of the tank junglers that are being played. How can XL, right? How can XL adjust? Maybe they pick up Ivan. I think Ivan for XL could be massive in their draft, and they should be playing Poppy. I think Fnatic, you know, the main band that they need to think about coming into this series is Rumble. And then I think that they need to just put a higher prior on Tristana, if anything. I want to see some Tristana because I think the answers from Abbedagge are not so strong into Tristana. And I think after Tristana, there's going to be LeBlanc and Azir. And I think that you can play Jace there. And I think that could be really, really big, you know? But I have to lean towards Fnatic. And that's it. That's the matchups. XL versus Fnatic, BDS versus SK. Do you guys have any questions in regards to the matchup? Something that we haven't covered? You guys have an opportunity to pick my brain here. I will answer questions for the next 15 minutes. You talk about Peach champs? Yeah, we covered Peach champs. I think Peach needs to fucking play. Peach really needs to play some Ivan. And they need to pick his champion 1-2 every game. Let him play Ivan, Poppy, Maokai. Lock it in every game. Like, don't get it twisted, man. Rel, Ivan, Poppy, lock it in no matter what. This is how Peach can find himself again. And I think Fnatic, what they should do coming into the series, never let enemy, they have to. What should be bot combo for Fnatic to make their impact in melee support meta? It's not, it's more about learning how to play rather than champs. It's like versus XL, the champions you need to keep in mind are Rel, Alistar Angles, Tristana, Maokai, Rumble. These are the champions you need to keep track of, right? I think Rumble is ban, Maokai is ban, okay? Or first pick Maokai yourself, right? It's like these champions need to be out. Alistar, you can create scenarios where the enemy can't pick Alistar, which is perfectly fine, right? And then the question is, it's like, what answer will you have into Trist? People can play Ahri, Azir, Jace. Some people even like Annie. Yeah, Nico. These things we don't consider, right? This is things, Ahri is less likely, Azir, Jace could be played, right? I think these are the things that you need to make sure that you deny, right? XL on the other side, I like Peach needs to be ready to play Ivan. Like this is going to be massive for them. Ivan is so important because it changes the dynamic of everything, right? I think this is going to be super, super important. Ivan. Can Peach pick up Ivan? And then make sure that he plays Poppy, Ivan, Maokai, Rel. Don't fucking want to see Viego. Don't want to fucking see Lee Sin. That's going to hurt him super, super much. Super much. Another thing, right? What's interesting for Fnatic side is... What's interesting for Fnatic side, right? If Rel is out of the picture, right? If Rel is out of the picture and Nautilus gets banned in 4-5, right? That Lulu, Milio, Soraka, they have many spots where they can be picked, like in Rakan. Tarek even can be picked. And I think this is where Trymbi can find himself again and do good, you know? This can be very good. Mauka got a nerf a lot and it's clear. Niski said that. 4 minutes first clear. Well, either you're lying or Niski's lying, because I can go into client right now and clear on time. Like it's really true. Like this is just not true. Mauka is really OP still. The change is really whatever. 4 minutes full clear, like, bro, it's really not true what you're saying. So, to make this super clear, I think 3-2. 3-2. Tough to predict. Is there a way to get tilt out of players from scrims, or is it just impossible as coach to make sure they go into neutrally? Of course, it's an education process, right? It's 100% education process. Like if you have players that get tilted from scrims, then you've done things the wrong way, 100%. You know, you've just done things the wrong way. It's like if you have players that tilt, you know, it's such a shit problem to have. It's like you shouldn't be in the LEC, I think, if you tilt from scrims. I'm not gonna lie. You just shouldn't be in the LEC. It's like you're a top 50 player in your region and you tilt from scrims. Fuck off. That's my state. Like if you can't get it through to your players to educate them on the importance of practice and the necessity of practice, and you haven't created the foundation strong enough for you to actually get the most out of practice, because it usually comes from two ways. Tilt comes from scrims because they are useless. Why are they useless? That's a problem in itself. Or second, the player has shit mentality. Two things that are extremely bad things. Extremely bad things. You mean tilting consistently in after scrims or even one-off? No, it's like if you're in a position, right, where a player tilts, so to speak, right? It's like, what is tilt? Let's define tilt. Tilt is acting against your own values in some kind of destructive manner, right? That is what tilt is, right? And inherently, it's a bad thing, right? That's the assumption. It's a bad thing. If the education process and what it means to be a pro player within your team hasn't been defined from the get-go, like if you have done the right things, you can easily mention, yo, this is not good, man. You need to get your shit in the game. You're wasting the time of 20 individuals that are right now in this practice session. And we are trying to build something sincere here. I need you to focus up on this. I need you to focus on this, right? If you can't pull your player aside and find impact by saying exactly what I just said now, then the foundation hasn't been set correctly, right? And for some players that's going to be harder, for some people it's going to be harder, right? So there's definitely, you know, some team situations where there's a give and take. Some players take a heavier burden in scrims. Some players, they take more energy in scrims. So there are some players out there that are really good players, but they drain their teammates. They are draining their teammates. You know? It's like there are players that give energy to their teammates and there's players that take energy from their teammates. And sometimes you can have team environments where you have energy vampires left and right, and you just, as you go through the motion of scrims, if you didn't put a stop to it early on, it is going to drain you for the whole year. I can tell you that much. Okay, let's focus back on the cities, guys. Let's focus back on the cities. Energy vampires, aka extroverts. No, it's not that. Honestly, the introvert energy vampires are even worse. Because they're gonna passively not say anything and just carry shit, and they're gonna try to like just go through the motion of the scrim without raising any issues. They're even worse. They're even worse. They're gonna be like sabotaging the scrim session in their own mind, and they're gonna justify it in their own mind without the involvement of everyone. Yo, Kitty, thank you very much for the raid. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kitty. I hope you had a good stream. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Kitty stream, we are currently just rounding off and making sure that we've covered the LEC as good as possible. Who's fourth LCK seed? I think How Alive is gonna win, but honestly, I could see a world where Canyon is gonna roll up Mr. Grizzly into a blunt and smoke him up. I have a feeling that's gonna happen. So it's Grizzly versus Canyon. I'm hoping that Damon wins. Showmaker, Canyon, Deft. Come on, man. Come on. Get in there, man. And also, the story of only Pioshik being the one requalifying to the World Championship, that is way too fucking funny. Oh shit, Deft. Deft. I forgot Deft. Shit, I forgot Deft. Deft is gonna get through on the other side, so there's always going to be DRX players. I think A11, your question is way too vague, and I would have to take too much from inside information that I have, so I can't answer this. Because obviously, I have so much inside information, you know, and I'm making these rundowns with the context of this is what we know from the outside. I think with everything that we know from outside, Fnatic is the better team, right? Have you already talked about which of the remaining 4 teams would be the best matchup against NA 4th? What do you mean? You mean for Golden Guardians or for us? Yeah, if you want to guarantee win, then yeah, you send G2. But I'm assuming you're talking about these 4, right? So between these 4, I think probably the best team to send. It's weird because I don't know the form. I don't know the form. And I think Golden Guardians is a tough team to beat. I can see a world where Golden Guardians beats all 4 because this assumes that they're coming in as 4th seed, right? I think Golden Guardians, I think they have good chances to beat all 4 of these teams. For sure. I think people should not scream like the main thing I think what Golden Guardians is bad at, I think is just their bot lane phase. So probably you want to send a strong bot lane. I think probably BDS is the best team to send against them. I think BDS, I think probably with everything that I know now, I think they would beat them most convincingly. I think you want to just send in a strong bot lane against BDS. I mean, against GG. Like, Stixay is a dirty fucking inter when it comes to, like, the first 15 minutes of the game, I'm not gonna lie. Alright, final questions, guys. Final questions before I round off and close it off. Where are you going? I'm leaving. Have you heard any rumors of team scrims? I would never talk about that. I would never talk about that publicly. Never. We'll do it, Taekwondo. Wait, Taekwondo, you're one of my regulars. You've left me for Kitty. Do pop quiz? I'll do pop quiz tomorrow. Guys, tomorrow is KC reviews into LEC. Guys, should I live view? What you mean, Taekwondo? You're one of my regulars, and now you followed Kitty's raid into my stream again. That's crazy. We're gonna do like 3 K-Corporate games into LEC. So do we live you DK versus How Alive? That's the question. Because it's such a long day. Do we live you this, guys? Nah, let's live view it. Let's live view it. Fuck it. Let's live view it. It's a fucking world spot, so either way we have to watch it, right? I'll catch you guys at 8 AM. Let's watch it. Let's watch it. Let's watch it. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. Thank you for watching my LEC rundown. If you sneeze during this Twitch stream or during this YouTube video, bless you and bless your face. I'll catch you guys on the flippity flop. All of the best to you guys. 8 AM. We're gonna do Damwon versus HLE into K-Corp into LEC. It's gonna be a banger. It's gonna be a banger. Take care. Take care, my homies.